Hello, Rob.
Okay, hello Maria.
Nice to see you.
And to see you live after some mails. And yeah,
We
okay.
have sent mails to and fro for a while now to get this conversation going. I was recommended to contact you through Johannes de Young, who is
Yeah.
the director of the Christian Political Foundation of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And he suggested that I read your book, which is called Political
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom, A
Yeah.
Future for Christian Politics, and that we had a conversation. So here we are.
Okay. Yeah, I will hold up the official version.
I found this interesting because what I have been doing
Mm-hmm.
is searching for the roots of Christian democracy and the core values of Christian democracy. I
Okay.
myself work for a Christian Democratic Party in Sweden,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very much interested in ideology, and we are trying to find the roots and how to express this in a new language. But the
Okay.
Christian democratic movement often go back to the Catholic social teaching.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. And here you have a little bit of a different angle on things.
Mm-hmm.
It says in your book you're talking about founding fathers of this party, the Christian Uni, as being Augustine, Luther, Calvin, Rone van Prinster, who I don't know, and Abraham Kuyper. Is that right?
Kuiper. Kuiper. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's one of the most famous Dutch politicians, actually.
Mhm.
He is famous, especially worldwide, in America, Canada, South Africa, Australia, and so on, Korea,
Yes.
Brazil. But in the Netherlands, uh, they have a little bit bad feelings about this Kuiper because he was a quite fierce person himself.
Mhm.
So as long as he could use political friends, they were his friends, but afterwards he just jumped them. So
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, so and the pillarization, if you know the word pillarization, in
Mhm.
his legacy, the legacy of Abraham Kuyper in the Netherlands, um, is called pillarization because society more or less became divided into, let's say, ideological streams or
Mhm.
pillars. So the socialists at the end of we are talking again about 1900. So the
Yes.
socialists were already there, and there was in the Netherlands a big liberal, more or less Protestant liberal elite.
Mhm.
And then Abraham Kuyper started to bring together um, the more Calvinist, let's say, masses.
Mhm.
So they were usually stricter Protestants than this liberal elite.
Okay.
Um, and they were eager to have at least the freedom to have their own schools, for example, schools for
Mm.
children, in order not to be influenced by these liberals and their often, well, theologically, that was a kind of modern influences that they didn't like.
Mhm.
Well, and in the Netherlands, of course, there was a Catholic movement at the same time as well.
Yes.
Right, and so the political landscape, even now in the Netherlands, still reflects those ideological differences. So socialist parties, well, Catholics and Protestants worked together, and there are several Christian parties. A Christian Democratic Party in the Netherlands that is a
Mhm.
kind of combination of Protestant and Catholic, for example.
Mhm.
So this a parliament consisting of multiple parties, that was the legacy of this Abraham Kuyper in the Netherlands.
Yes.
And if you compare this to what is happening in the United States, for example, you have two big parties. They don't give each other any moving space, so to say. They just hold each other, and it's almost another kind of lockdown, a kind of political lockdown. What is happening in the United States?
But between these pillars, as you are, they're also represented in your book when it says that they are like Protestant, Catholic, Socialist, Communist, and Liberal Humanist. There were no interaction in between them.
Well, in the time of Abraham Kuyper, the interaction was there, but it was at the level of the leaders. So the more well-to-do still were the ones that were elected in parliament. And those people within parliament, of course, interacted with each other. And behind the screens, the leaders interacted with each other. So that's the way the pillars were in touch. And it's a kind of maybe image building. When people are negative about separated groups within a population, then they suggest that there has been no interaction at all. But at the level of villages, in a lot of cases, the people just interacted as they were aware of their, let's say, religious or ideological differences, but they knew each other within every village.
Yes.
So sometimes there were problems that there was, let's say, a Roman Catholic baker and a Protestant baker, and the Protestant bought at their
Protestant bakery.
And the Catholics the other way around. Of course, that is possible, but usually there was much more interaction, maybe than today, between the Amsterdam in the Netherlands, the Amsterdam secularized elite in Amsterdam, and what we call the Bible Belt in the Netherlands.
Yes.
Are a lot of Protestants. When do those Protestants of the Bible Belt talk with the secular elite in Amsterdam and the other way around? So we've not lost the pillarization. We have a new kind of pillarization, even with Twitter on social media. We just are in our own bubble. And we are inclined to be negative about the others.
That is what I've seen. I've been talking now to Christian Democrats mostly in Finland, Norway, Denmark, and Sweden.
Okay.
And it is quite interesting. I'm talking to them. I'm asking them what kind of cooperations can you see with other people, because I feel it's very much this. Painting the other one as evil or dumb or not capable of seeing the problem. And in a way, I would really like to first lift up the ideology of the Christian Democrats so that we understand the basis, what we're standing on, and then being able to see where can we link on to others, where do they have the same values and where don't they? So it's an interesting journey.
Yeah. And even if values differ, even then cooperation can be important, because, for example, within Parliament, several voices are coming together.
Yes.
And that's the reason that you are able, for example, to have attention for both security and privacy. So usually that is a clash. People that are strong about privacy and people that are strong about security. But you can say, well, why is this a clash? It's both important. And I'm glad that some people are very sensitive about privacy.
Yes.
And I'm glad that some people are very sensitive about security.
Mm-hmm.
The quest for wisdom,
Yes.
is how to combine this.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires compromises or balancing
Mm.
or nuances. Well, and that's the way to get a more politics of cooperation.
Mm-hmm. I
Instead,
think finally, right now, I am understanding what you were talking about in the book. It says of the parliament, it should be an écoutement from the French écouter, to listen,
yeah,
more perhaps than a parliament from parler, to speak.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah, exactly.
and and to listen to each other, to find this way of agreeing on different things, or at least understanding each other's viewpoints, because some people will be in majority,
Mm-hmm.
but if they do not listen, they will suppress the minority.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point of democracy. That
Mm-hmm.
prepare to listen to the others, even if you are yourself belonging to the majority view.
Yes.
So modern media has accelerated the tendency to push each other out of the air, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
To on Facebook and Twitter and so on, just every individual has become a kind of broadcasting
Yes.
institution. Every
And
individual.
you're on my show.
Sorry.
And you are on my show right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. So everybody can start a blog or a vlog.
Yes.
So everybody is starting to send and talk and give his views and opinions. But the basics of democracy is, well, are we prepared to live together in one territory?
Yes.
Even if we know that there are majority views and minority views, and maybe on different subjects, the majorities and minorities move, not always the same. So, first, then, of course, you should be prepared to listen to each other. So, although we have called this institute, this political institute, parliament, that's the institution where we can speak to each other, of course. But speaking to each other presupposes that you are prepared to listen to each other. But what you see now is that people are not interested in the real debate in parliament, but they are interested in where is the camera. And when I am having a good one-liner, then that will be picked up by the camera and that will be broadcasted by the media in society. So they are talking within parliament to each other, but they are talking to the people in the country, in the people around, that they want to confirm in their biases, in their prejudices, and in their opinions that they have already.
This is so interesting, because I was also reading about the importance of closed rooms when you are debating politics. Because there are, I mean, of course, parliament is open and should be open and broadcasted. But you also have sessions behind closed doors. There you have the possibility to listen to each other, to find if you can agree. Even a minority view can be lifted up. The other ones can say, okay, we realize that this is good, even though it came from you, and I will not support you openly, but I can do this if we say it's our idea. And sometimes I have seen from these closed sessions in Sweden that some politicians are on Twitter, live, they're on Twitter, like, and they're live broadcasting the conversations that are taking room in this closed session. And then they can say, oh, we agreed on this. but a few hours later, it doesn't hold any value anymore. So there is an importance in democracy for the closed session where you can find agreement and then say, this is our standpoint.
Okay. Yeah, but even then I would advocate to go one step further and not to allow that Parliament itself, that should be open and there is need of transparency and so on, that in such an open environment we do as if we are just fighting each other. So I don't agree with that one because he is a socialist or something like that. Why? Why can't we, even in politics, train the people of the whole country in giving the example, by giving the example of, okay, this is the point I don't agree with you, but this is the point I do agree with you. And that's the reason that we can work together for this law proposal or whatever. So why do we give the impression in Parliament that we are always fighting?
Yes.
It's not, it is giving actually it's giving a quite cynical view of what politics is. And
it does.
And at the same moment, then we are complaining, the citizens are losing trust in politics. They are losing their confidence in politics. They are cynical about politics. Yes, why are people cynical about politics? Because we are doing politics in a quite cynical way. Instead of just being open in the multiple ways in which we can cooperate, the multiple ways in which our value systems do overlap. Just be open about that.
Yes, you are talking in the book about this, that we have the Western culture is built on a layer of Christian culture also, and that many of these different political ideas that has grown out of this could find common ground.
I think so. Even communism and socialism, a kind of secularized version of Christian, what theologians call eschatology.
Yes.
The view of a better future. And whether you call it, maybe you call this the new earth that is given by God himself, or you are thinking about the contribution that people can give, how people can contribute towards growing towards a better world. That is a basically Jewish, or if you want, Christian view of the future.
Yes.
And of a line towards such a future. And communism and socialism and even liberalism are more or less secularized ways to have this progress effectuated.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't want to colonize other ideologies, but this is the historical way how political liberalism and socialism split off from the original Christian centuries that Europe that was the character of Europe during let's say the times after the Roman Empire, at least until the 18th century, more or less. Yes. 19th century. That was quite clear. Everywhere in Europe you see villages with the church and church towers in the center.
Yes.
Again, you can be cynical about hunger for power, leadership, Christian leadership included, but the underlying values are still there and have been there for centuries and have influenced the people. And the hunger for power is not the specific component that is brought in by the gospel of Jesus Christ, by Christians, but the hunger for power was already there. So,
but how to execute political wisdom? Because you've written a whole book about it. So
your question is?
How to execute political wisdom in this pattern of political parties, different ideologies, and also a hunger for power, because even Christian politicians do strive to do something to get in a position where you can have power, because if it's only when you have power that you can implement your ideas. You have to work within a political party right now if you want to influence what's going to happen on legislation and taxes and schools, as we were saying. What is political wisdom?
Yeah. Well, the basic idea is what we talked already about, cooperation, being prepared to listen and to cooperate. So the word power itself can have a very negative sense around it, so to say. And of course, when people are going to enforce, because they have the power to do that, when people are going to enforce against the wills of other people, that's the origin of that negative view of power. But power is everywhere. A small child discovers that it has the power to stand up suddenly, and is about that new discovered power. So power in itself is not necessarily a negative element of human life. So what is important, I would say, is that politics not is defining itself as power play, but that it is primarily defining itself as a search for wisdom.
Yes.
Together, because we know we differ in our value systems. Especially exactly because you know you differ, that is the reason to cooperate.
Yes.
And of course, there will be always a layer of a kind of power play. But the question is, are you busy with suppressing or encadering, so to say, the tendencies towards power within a context of search for wisdom, a context of listening to each other, a context of wanting to live together, a context of wanting to cooperate. That is the way it's like handle with care. Power to be handled with care. And the nice thing is, exactly in this period of Corona crisis, at least in the Netherlands, and probably in Sweden you see the same thing, but in the Netherlands you see that suddenly our prime minister, who is from the political liberal party, is really the prime minister for the whole of the country at the moment. And people from different ideologies, so to say, are positive mostly about the way he is handling crisis at the moment. And a lot of initiatives are coming up, kinds of charity, and suddenly the people seem to be able to work together.
Yes. And as I've heard many people say, there's nothing good about the virus. Of course there is not. But there is good in people, which is showing in this situation, that life comes first, health comes first, caring about each other, calling our elderly people, and showing different kinds of shopping for each other and such, which has been a good experience coming out of this, I think.
And if you are talking about political liberalism, then the individual is the central atom, so to say, central element of liberal politics. There's nothing between the state and the individual. All middle organizations, there are enterprises, there are companies, but they are driven by individuals. So that's the liberal, political liberalism is centered around the individual. But suddenly this Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, in his talks on television in the Netherlands, that were seen by millions of people in the Netherlands, suddenly this liberal Mark Rutte, Prime Minister, is saying, you don't live for yourself alone.
Wow.
Well, okay. This is a new kind of liberalism. The liberals discover we don't live for ourselves alone.
Yeah. You had a beautiful picture in the book where you talked about different small entities where there is a lot of space for the individual in it. So individualism is not like inherently bad, but you work within your different small groups, and then the groups work together. So there is between the state and the individual.
The spider web model I assume are talking about. It's a spider web of the different, you can say areas in society, or the different types of organizations in society. And they are all working together. So we are talking indeed about individuals, because we human beings are individuals.
Yes.
But at the same time, we are coming together by forming families. Or we come together by starting companies, enterprises. Or we are coming together, working together in hospitals. Or we are coming together by in sports clubs, for example. And all those types of organizations you can picture indeed as small circles, so to say. And between those circles, all kinds of interaction. And actually the government is just one of those circles. It's not of a pyramid, but it's just one of the circles. It's the kind of, maybe you can compare it to the arbiter, the umpire, in a football match. So there are 2 times 11 players. There is an umpire walking between them, and he should not walk in the way. He should not play himself. He's the umpire to look whether everything is going according to the rules. Is it the righteous? Is it just play? What is going on there? So
that's a beautiful picture of the government as the umpire. I love that one. I haven't heard it before.
Yeah, maybe it's not the only image for the government, but I think it's an important image, because the wisdom of politics, the wisdom of the government should be directed toward justice. Justice is the central element. Justice, and the consequence of justice is the hope that justice brings peace.
Yes.
So peace in society, peace among the different peoples with the different groups in society, the different types of organizations in society, with that different, the differences in what they consider to be important. And that had to be balanced within society. So that's the role of an umpire. Yeah.
Yes.
And actually that view of different types of organizations in society is a view that is promoted again by this Abraham Kuyper that we talked about. Yeah.
Because I think I would try and study him a little bit more, because I was very interested in this anti-revolutionary party that he founded in 1879.
Okay.
The only time I really heard about it, it was when I was listening to a podcast from America, which was talking about, is Christian democracy applicable in the American political scene? And they managed to get everything wrong about Christian democracy. There was nothing about Christian democracy in this show, but they were talking about the anti-revolutionary party. So I think I will have to go back and see more about this.
Okay. Yeah.
But I understand your book. Then we are going to come into a close now, because I think that I'm really enjoying this conversation.
Okay.
But it will also be about half an hour for people to listen.
Okay, you really have to select.
No, but as how I understand your book, it is about political wisdom, and it is about Christians in politics, but it's also about how politicians should act towards each other, even what kind of ideology they are into, to try and find the common good, which is the end word of your book.
Yeah. Maybe it should not have been the end word, but it is a quite general word used to describe the aim of politics. But I personally would prefer to focus on that word justice, because that limits the task of the government. Because the government should not do everything that is good for the common good. The kernel of the thinking of Abraham Kuyper and Doyewit is that you leave to the different types of organizations in society and to the individuals of society, leave to those other levels is not a good word, but the other circles of society, what can be contributed to the common good. And even the government has something to contribute to the common. But the government is doing that as an umpire, concentrating on is the power play in society a just power play.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good conclusion, and I thank you for this conversation. It's been educational for me, and it's opened up other views from your book that I didn't react to initially. So I will put the recommendation of your book to my little course of Christian democracy ideology. And thank you for being a part of this today.
Okay, and thank you for challenging me to my reactions, and I'm glad that such a translation that it was from a Dutch book original, that it is used in Europe, because that was, of course, the intention of the translator.
Yes.
That will be used, and the intention of Salux, the organization of it, Johannes de Jong, that is chaired by Johannes de Jong. So, thank you for this conversation as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.